Hello friends, I am Professor Muhammad Masood Ahmad in my legal classes. Today we have the second class, the subject called History of Courts, Legislatures and Legal Profession in India. This subject we have for the L.L.B course in most of the universities. Usually it is 3 years L.L.B or 5 years L.L.B. The previous class we discussed in class 1, it is about the syllabus, its analysis of the syllabus and the division of the syllabus in order to have the proper orientation about the history of courts, legislature and legal profession in India. And this is the second class. In the second class, we are going to cover East India Company, its establishment and incorporation. Let us go to the topic. Whenever we talk about the history of India with regard to the administration, judiciary, we talk about the East India Company. East India Company was also known as Honorable East India Company or simply John Company informally. It was a joint stock company established with a purpose of trading with the East Indies. If you remember, the historically the Britishers, it is in the year of 1700, the beginning of the 18th century, they had the two trade places. One is they call it as East India, which is our India, and second one it is West Indies. It is there in America. So there they established a company, West Indies Company, and here in India it is East India Company. So this is the beginning of Britishers entering into India. Historically, if we see the founder of East India Company, it is Thomas Smythe, Royal Charter, John Watts. These individuals founded the East India Company, and the founding date it is 31st December 1600, year 1600. Then the first English factory in India was established at Surat by January 1613. The first East India Company factory had come up at Surat. The headquarter it is in London, United Kingdom, and this East India Company had the business for almost 174 years. As we have established, they have established on 31st December 1600, and the business was closed down here on 1st June 1874. It is almost 149 years ago. So it is about 149 years ago. Then the chartered. The chartered, it is granted, it is signed by the Queen Elizabeth to the East India Company. Queen Elizabeth to the East India Company. Yeah. Then the next one is the British East India Company was established on 31st December 1600. The British East India Company received a royal charter from the British monarch Elizabeth I to trade with the East Indies. The company went on colonize the Indian subcontinent. This is the beginning of British rule in subcontinent. It was started as monopolistic trading body so that the England could participate in the East Indian spice trade. East India Company, why it was established? What was the objective behind? The East India Company was initially established in 1600 to act as a trading body for English merchants, especially to participate the East Indian spice trade. It later added such items as cotton, silk, indigo, saltpeter, tea, and opium to its wares and also participated in the slave trade. So the establishment of East India Company, there was a commercial objective, it is a trading objective. And initially in the year 1600, they did not have any intention of capturing India or ruling India. So they entered as establishing a joint stock company, what we established now. So that too, they had a focus of business on initially on Indian spice, and then they added the other product like cotton, silk, indigo, salt, pepper, tea, and opium. So this is the background of establishment of East India Company. East India Company composition. A royal charter created English East India Company on 31st December 1600 as a limited joint stock company. People invested capital and received part of the profits. Managed by a group of 215 merchants and investors headed by uh, Errol of Cumberland. Errol of Cumberland. He is from the UK. So there are 215 merchants. They are the investors. As the Giantista company has got the characteristic, whoever are the investors and whoever are the shareholders, they contribute to the business. So in case of profit, it will be distributed among these shareholders. Here, in this case, it is 215 merchants. Basically, they are from the UK. East India Company and Royal Charter. East India Company was granted the Royal Charter on 31st December 1600 by Queen Elizabeth. As a consequence of this charter, the British East India Company set up trading establishment on the east and west coast of India and in Bengal. So this is the background. See, the Royal Charter, see, if you go for our Companies Act, Conventional Companies Act, a few years back, we had Companies Act 1956. Now we have the Companies Act 2013. So when we incorporate, when we establish a company, joint stock company, whether it is a private limited company or public limited company, we have a basic fundamental document. We call it as a charter. So now in the present era, this charter, we call it either memorandum of association or articles of association of a company. So when we registered in present era, we go for memorandum and articles of association as laid down by the Companies Act 2013. So this formality, this registration process we do with the registrar of company. So that time, this charter, the agreement, it was signed by Queen Elizabeth and she issued the charter for East India Company. A royal charter is an instrument of incorporation granted by the king, which confers the independent legal personality on an organization and defines its objectives, constitution, and powers to govern its affair. As I already mentioned you, in the present era also, we have the charter document like Memorandum of Association and Articles of Association. That is the legal document. And these charter are Memorandum of Association and Articles of Association. So they give the entity to the company. So the company, we call it as a business entity. It is an artificial person. So human beings, you and I know, we call ourselves as a human being. So we have company, we call company as an artificial person. It may not be the natural person, but artificial person, it has got the identity. So how the company, the Jaitesta company will be having the identity? Because it's a legal document, that is the legal charter. So in the year 1600, the Queen Elizabeth, she signed the charter for incorporation of East India Company. In the present era, the registrar of companies, that regulatory body issues the incorporation certificate. Along with, we have the governance, that is governance we do, company's governance we do by following its memorandum of association and articles of association. The similar situation we had in the year 1600, that is in Royal Charter. So this is the scanned copy of the Royal Charter. I think it is about 400, I think 23 years ago. So that we had 400, more than that. So this is the charter. So it is a handwritten document, and few of the contents are visible here. So when it was signed and who has signed and what are the objectives, as I already mentioned you. Here we have the rules and regulations of the governance of the company, how we are going to govern the company and how we are going to administer the company. So for that, the rules and regulation we have usually in the charter. So this is the painting where the East India Company is handing over the signed charter to the Indian ruler, whoever were there in the year 1600. And this happened exactly on 31st December 1600. So this charter was signed by the Queen Elizabeth I, and that is handed over to the local rulers, whoever were ruling India at that time. So it happened on 31st December 2000. 31st December 1600. Thank you, my dear student. Uh, Whenever we talk about the history of courts, legislature, so if we want to have the historical background and the insight, I think the beginning is always, it is the East India Company. So because the formal trade and formal commercialization and the formal administration and the formal judiciary and legislature, so all these aspects, I think, initiated in the year 1600 when the Britishers came to India with a trading objective and commercial business objective in the form of incorporating it is East India Company. Anyhow, after some time, after a few years or decade or a century, that the shape of the East India Company, it has changed. It is transformed uh, from uh, from a commercial and trading to the political and the ruling rule on India. So this is about the background, historical background and historical perspective of East India Company. Thank you, my dear students. All the best, and we'll be meeting in the next class. Thank you.